summer's best bounty, which in August and September in Georgia is tomatoes and olive oil. This is the start of a Greek Briam. That is kind of like a French Ratatouille, and it is just delicious. And you can use any of the summer's produce in this, and you could even make this in the winter. It would make winter produce taste better too. So let me show you what I have. I have tomatoes and little Yukon Gold potatoes. I have eggplant. Isn't that cute? These are fairy tale eggplants. I got them at the farmer's market. So you do want to use a smaller eggplant instead of the big round Italian ones, the big fat ones. The smaller it is, the easier it's going to be to use in this Briam or Greek Ratatouille. So what I did is I sliced those veggies and I put them in a colander right here, and I salted them. And the reason I did that was to let the liquid drain off. I have about a quarter cup of liquid in here that came from my veggies. Once I've done that, what I did was I patted them with paper towels. You could do it with a kitchen towel. You could roll it up in a kitchen towel. You're just trying to get the excess moisture out of these veggies. And then I put them in a big bowl. And when I put them in the big bowl, I added some things to it. And what I did was I put in about a quarter cup of olive oil, and then I put some herbs and spices that are very Mediterranean. I put in oregano and thyme and rosemary and dill. But you know what? If you don't have all of those spices and herbs, you know what you can use? You can use some Italian seasoning, about 3 tablespoons, but make sure that you also add in that dill, because that's what gives it that Greek flavor, I feel. Since I'd already salted these veggies, I didn't put more salt in here, but I did use some freshly ground mixed peppercorns. So you could use black pepper, just make sure it's freshly ground, right? So I went ahead and put that in the bowl, and with the olive oil, the spices, and the pepper, and let it sit for a minute while I prepped 2 other veggies. And the 2 other veggies I prepped were a roasted red pepper. So I used 2 roasted red peppers in this. I just seeded it, ribbed and seeded it, and cut it into strips. And that's what I have left over right there. And then I also did 1 big old red onion, and I just sliced it in half and then sliced it thinly. So those are my veggies. To start my Briam, what I want to do is take a baking dish. You could take a pie plate. You could take a oven-proof skillet. Anything like that will work perfectly. But I had a pretty little dish like this. It's a baking dish, so I decided to use it. So we're going to start with something you're familiar with if you have watched Shayna and I on anything, and that is some fire roasted tomatoes. Now this is the Mere Glen fire roasted tomatoes, but this specifically are these tomatoes are crushed. Okay, we want the crushed ones because we want these to make a sauce. If you don't have the crushed tomatoes and you have diced ones, just whiz it up in your food processor or blender for a minute, or just mash those tomatoes down a little bit. So I used about a half a 15-ounce can, and I started my pan with spraying it with some olive oil spray, extra virgin olive oil spray. Then what I did was put in the tomatoes, about half a can, and then I started putting in my my veggies. And I used all of these veggies here. Now I'm going to put on gloves for this because it's kind of a messy job, but you know, at home you don't have to do that. So what I'm going to do is put on my gloves, and then, you know, to get this started, it's a little tricky because you have to hold some of the tomatoes and potatoes and eggplant together. But if you've got on gloves, it makes it easier, and you don't have to make it perfect, right? You don't want it to look like you bought it at Whole Foods. You want it to look like yours. And if you like puzzles or you like craft projects, this is a great dish for you. So I'm gonna put in the last couple just to show you how I did it. So when I started, I kind of held them up together and then kind of just kept them going around, and I tried to alternate colors because the color in this is beautiful, isn't it? I've got the gold from the potatoes, the purple from the onions, and the purple from the eggplant too. And then I've got the red from the peppers and the tomatoes. You could use a different color of pepper and have even another color in your Briam. So I've got a potato here last. So I'm gonna, oops, where is it? I'm gonna grab a tomato, and then I'm gonna put some of my onion in there. So you see I'm just kind of sliding it right in tightly. So there we go. I've got some eggplant, another potato, maybe another, oh, I'm forgetting my roasted red pepper. So I'm just kind of sliding that in there. And I'm just trying to get this really, really full of veggies before I do anything else with it. Oh my gosh, y'all, this is so pretty. I hope you make this at home. It will really wow your family and friends. And you know, this is gonna take a while to cook, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, so I've got it all ready, and look at that. And the juice from both the veggies and that those crushed or fire roasted crushed tomatoes is kind of coming up, and that's what's going to make our sauce. I'm going to use the rest of this sauce to kind of put on top of here. The rest of the tomatoes that are making the sauce, put on top of there. And since I have my hands all nicely in gloves, I'm just going to pat it around a little bit. Okay. And then I think I'll give it a final spray with some of that olive oil spray. So I'm going to take these off and set them aside. And I've got some veggies left over. Oh my gosh, I can make another one. Okay, and believe it or not, it does take a lot of veggies to make this. You think when you're cutting up those veg that you are gonna have so much veggie left over, and I promise you, you won't. You might have a little, but not a lot. So I'm gonna move this over because I wanna show you how I'm gonna put this in the oven. So I wanna start with making like a steam bath. So everything is gonna cook. Remember, those potatoes are not cooked, so we need to get them really in that moisture and get them to hang out so they'll cook beautifully, and they're gonna absorb all those spices and things like that. So what I did was I took a sheet tray and then I made like a big sling out of aluminum foil. And I'm gonna put my Briam right in the middle. Now this also helps, I'm gonna set this aside too. This also helps you to not have any, if this would kind of bubble over a little bit, you wouldn't have any spills in your oven as well. Oh, look at that, y'all. Isn't that just gorgeous? I'm so excited, I can't wait. So next up, what I'm gonna do is just spray it down on the sides with a little bit of my olive oil spray. And now I'm gonna make like a tent over the top of this so that my Briam will be in its own little steam oven in my oven, which I have preheated, by the way, to 400 degrees. And you can read all of these directions in the recipe, but it always helps when you see it, doesn't it? Okay, so there's my little tent for the Briam. It's going into a 400-degree oven for about 45 minutes. I'm gonna take it out and then I'm gonna uncover it. And I'm still gonna leave it on the tray because it's so much easier to get it in and out of the oven when it's on a sheet tray. So 45 minutes covered, then I'm gonna take the aluminum foil off, and then I'm just gonna kind of wrap it on the sides, leave it on the tray, just make it easy. And then I'm gonna put it back in that 400-degree oven for about 45 more minutes. I want that liquid to absorb, and I want it all to get lovely and golden and roasty on the outside. So in about an hour and a half, I'll come back and take it out of the oven, and I'm gonna show you the finished Briam, along with talking to you about a little bit of olive oil in the next video.